Is that okay? Yeah, thumbs up. All right, cool. All right. First of all, I want to say thank you for inviting me. It is such an honor. And I've known Chantel for some years, so it's so lovely to be here with her. And Jose, who is co-coordinator of our API Mindful EFL 6. So we work together. And as I said, so many friends there, so many names I know. So thank you for being here with us tonight. Now, when I was invited to do this session, I said yes, but I didn't know what I was going to do. And I'd been talking to Joseph for quite a while on how I wanted to work. I had these thoughts about the non-judgmental classroom. And it comes from this course that I did in mindfulness called Mind Kind Full. And one of my biggest takeaways was judgment, which we're going to be talking about today. And it's also a personal journey. Um, and I think that's quite important when we go on these personal journeys. These things make their way into the classroom as well. So I'm inviting you to join me on this journey. And we're going to start with a little bit of visualization. Okay. So, um, so let's begin by arriving together to this webinar. All right. And what I'd like you to do is to, first of all, get yourself comfortable. Okay. And close your eyes. Or if you don't want to close your eyes, maybe soften the gaze. And I want you to take a slow, deep breath in. Hold it for a moment and let it out gently. Now breathe in again, a little deeper, and feel your shoulders dropping as you exhale. One more breath in and out, letting your body settle. Now, picture yourself in your English classroom. You are there right now. The lesson is going so well. The students are engaged. They're working. They're happy. Can you hear all the sounds in your classroom? Suddenly, a student asks, "Teacher, how do you spell the word awkward?" You pause. Your mind goes blank. Notice your body. Maybe a tightening in your chest or heat in your face. That's the flash of self-judgment. I should know this, but I don't know how to spell awkward right now. Now let's shift the picture, okay? Imagine this is a non-judgmental classroom. You take a breath, you smile, and you say honestly, "Hmm, that's a tricky one. I'm not 100% sure. Let's check together." Your students lean forward, curious, not critical. Some guess the spelling. Others reach for their phone to check online. You check together. You confirm, and you move on. Notice your body now. The smile. You can smile. The release. The relief. So instead of shame, there is connection. You've modeled what it means to be a learner. Open and unafraid. Take one more Deep breath in and slowly out. When you're ready, open your eyes, carrying with you the image of a classroom where not knowing is not a failure, but an opportunity to learn together. And please type in the chat box one word that captures how you felt in that moment. Okay? I can't see the chat box, so
So let me read some of the words.
okay.
Some people are saying it felt like me, calm, relieved. So calm seems to be the
The
main
word,
word.
yeah.
Yes, yeah,
Have you ever been in that awkward moment?
I think we can
Do you
definitely.
know how to spell awkward? Now, this is a true story, and I'm sure we all have these stories. And I was teaching a very strong group of B2 students. Lovely group, lovely, lovely group. They were working hard. And Andrea, hand up, says, Anna, how do you spell awkward? And I did not know. I was just about to write the word on the board when it was those two W's that really got to me. Is it one W? Is it two W's? It sounds like it should be two, but it looks weird. Um, and I panicked. I completely panicked. Instead of saying, I don't know, let's check together, I felt as a teacher, I had to know the answer. So I could feel my heart beating. I could feel my face going red. So I said to Andrea, I need a tissue. I'll be right back. I'm just going to grab a tissue. I'll be right back. And across the hall was the teacher's room. And I went running to the teacher's room and realized I forgot my phone because I was going to check on my phone how do you spell awkward. So I remember just running around like a mad woman looking for a dictionary, which I eventually found. I learned how to spell awkward, two W's. I went running back to the classroom, breathless and writing on the board, awkward. Um, so yeah, that was a learning moment. I think had it been now, I would have dealt with it differently. I would have been more honest and shown my vulnerability. But the thing is, as teachers, we always feel we have to know the answer. All right. So as we go, what I'd like you to do on this journey in this webinar is not just thinking of our students, but thinking of ourselves and how we deal with judgment. Because I really believe that to be able to work with our students, we need to be working on ourselves first or working on ourselves together with our students. All right. So as we're working on these things, I'd like you to think about yourself and what things do you think you could work on? All right. It's just an invitation. So we're going to start this. I'd like to start the webinar with curiosity. And I think it's key in our classrooms, bringing curiosity into the classroom. So I'd like you to draw this grid in your notebooks or on a piece of paper. And in each square, I want you to write a question. What questions are you bringing with you to this session? All right. Now, I'm just giving you a minute. I want it to be very quick because I don't want you to overthink it. First of all, I'm not going to be asking you what your questions are nor your answers. So it's a personal roadmap for this webinar. And all questions are valid. Even if the question is, why am I here? That's valid. Okay. So I'll give you about a minute to write the 6 questions. If you don't manage all six, that's okay, because I won't be checking it. So we're going to turn this into a game of bingo. And I'd like these, as I said, these questions are going to be your own personal roadmap during this session. And I want you to notice how many questions get answered, and which stay open. And even if you don't find an answer to your questions, that's okay, because that means you're taking the learning further after this webinar is over. Okay. Sometimes the answer is not like a direct answer. It's something that makes you think, hmm, and you might want to come back to it later after the webinar, and that's fine. That's wonderful. So whenever you think you have an answer to a question, just tick. And as the title says, we're going to play bingo. Whenever you have the answer to all six questions, you can type bingo in the chat box. All right. So as I said, this is going to guide you throughout the session with curiosity. Now, I've chosen to look at judgment through four lenses, and these are the four lenses that help me deal with judgment. As I said before, it's also personal because I've been on a personal journey, um, and what I've learned has helped me in the classroom, and that's what I'd love to share with you today. So we're going to be looking at combat sin and judgment in the context of mindfulness. We're going to look at Krashen. I'm sure you're all familiar with Stephen Krashen, but we're going to be looking again at the affective filter and its role in the classroom as a reminder as well. We're going to be looking at Carol Dweck. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of her, and she talks about the growth mindset. So how are we going to deal with mistakes in the classroom? What's the role of judgment there? And we're going to look at Amy Edmonds. Uh, so she talks about psychological safety. Now, Edmonds talks about safety in teams. She's a professor of leadership at Stanford University, if I'm not mistaken. And her work is on creating safety, psychological safety with teams in the workforce. But a lot of what she talks about is so relevant in the classroom. So we're going to look at each one of these and the role of judgment and how judgment comes into the classroom. And hopefully, um, it'll spark some ideas for you. I have no answer. I mean, the answers, you will reach them yourself. But I'm more focused on a mindset and helping you start the school year with this new mindset when it comes to judgment. All right. So we're going to start off with the word judgment. Now, before we go into judgment, notice the spelling. This was just like awkward. How do you spell judgment? Is it with an E, without an E? I'm going to share with you that I did check the dictionary because I was so afraid of making a fool of myself here with a spelling mistake like awkward. So in American English, it's without an E, and it's accepted in British English as well. In British English, it's with an E. So this is a learning moment for all of us, and one for me. So, thinking of the word judgment, what I'd like you to do is in the chat box. I don't want a definition of judgment. I just want you to think of what words come to mind when you think of the word judgment. What words do you associate with judgment? And Chantel might have to read them out to me because I can't see the chat for some reason.
Yes.
Oh, wait, I see the chat.
Can you see it?
I can see it now.
Okay, great.
Mm. Judge, incorrect, insecurity, criticism. Evaluation, opinion, good, shame, misbehavior, outside. Okay, thank you. Um, so we're going to look at judgment in the context of mindfulness. And this is one of the definitions of judgment that really had an impact on me. So in mindfulness, judgment is when we label or evaluate thoughts, feelings, or experiences as good or bad instead of simply noticing them. It doesn't necessarily mean bad. Judgment could be good. She's beautiful. Yeah. So judgment could be bad, it can be good. But the thing about mindfulness, it's when we label or evaluate. I think that was a word that came up in the chat box was evaluate. Now, just to understand this better, judgment is like sticking a story or a label onto a post-it. So you grab a post-it and you put, oh, that's terrible. Oh, that's this. So boring. Duh. Or I can't do it. I'll never be able to do it. And imagine sticking those post-its on yourself. So yeah, I've got my post-its here. So you stick these post-its and then you're just covered in post-its. And that's what judgment is. You can be sticking them on yourself or you can be sticking them on other people. And they are just stories. So let's have, and what we want to do is actually remove them to make sure they don't stick. We're not throwing them away. We just don't want to walk around with all these labels stuck to us. So now let's think of our students and think about the labels that they attach, they stick to themselves, um, stick on themselves during the class, during the lesson. I'll give you one example. Yeah? Do you have your students sticking that label on themselves? Yeah, I'm not good at English. Yeah. Yeah, what other sticky notes, post-its do they stick on themselves? I can't do it. Hmm. Exactly. I can't speak. I don't know enough. Too hard. Absolutely. No idea. In Portuguese, it's sei lá. Do you get the sei lá? Um, can't remember. It's too difficult. I mean, we could go on and on, right? So I've got some here. Let's see if what you think about these.
Ciao.
Everyone is better than me. I
Oh,
always make mistakes. I always
ciao.
get it wrong. I think somebody has their sound on.
Prima la favorita.
I don't belong here.
Mm.
And this one, I put this one here because I
Sorry, Anna, I've muted you by mistake when I was trying to mute the participant. My
can you hear
apologies.
me now? Okay. So I worked at the end of the day and my students chose to go to International House. So what would happen is some of them just, I don't belong, I shouldn't be here. I don't belong here. They would ask their parents to take them out. Um, sorry. Everyone is going to laugh at me with speaking. I sound stupid when I speak. Yeah. Can you relate to these? Yeah. Our students. What about ourselves? How often do we put these labels on ourselves? Yeah. I was at a workshop I was at an event in Switzerland over the weekend, and I went to a fantastic session by Erica Osvath. And she did this experiment with us where she gave us these anagrams, like a list of four anagrams. And she told us when we got one right when we figured one out to put our hands up. Um, and first of all, my reaction was, I can't do this because I can't do anagrams. And then when she said to put our hands up, I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to be the only one that doesn't put her hand up, of course, because I can't do anagrams. And then as we were doing them, I really couldn't do them. And all these people putting their hands up, and she's good, all done, da 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 da, and me nothing. So I just thought, I just thought, forget it, forget it. I can't do it. I'm not doing them. And I stopped after the second one. I tried the first, couldn't do it, went the second, then I just turned it over, forget it. I was so relieved when she told us she was half the group had anagrams with words, and the other half just had letters. There were no words. And it was just to prove the point how we tell ourselves we can't do it. Um, and and it's a very interesting experiment to do because we really put ourselves in the role of students with the I can't do it and that mental block and giving up immediately. So helping our learners remove these post-its is very important. And also, we need to learn how to remove the post-its from ourselves. So we're going to look at a little strategy. Um, because with in mindfulness, we practice noticing the post-its without getting stuck to them. So this post-it shouldn't be here. I'm not throwing it away. I'm just putting it on my bulletin board, for example. I'm just leaving it here on my desk. I'm accepting it, I'm noticing it, but I don't want it stuck to me. Um, Now, I told you I came into this topic and mindfulness came into my life because of I went through a tragic situation with my father, which led to PTSD and panic attacks. And I don't know if anybody here has experienced panic attacks. They're very debilitating. And I used to get panic attacks, especially when I was driving. Eventually, I stopped driving. But it wasn't driving on any road. It was driving on the highway because I felt trapped. I felt I couldn't stop on the side of the road if I had a panic attack. I felt like there was no exits. I couldn't get out. Um, so I would avoid highways or driving as much as possible. So once I got into therapy and mindfulness, these little strategies really helped me. And they made a difference in my life, and I'm driving and I'm loving it. So we're going to look at how to remove these post-its, okay? And the first thing is to notice. Um, so before I got in the car, I would tell myself this story, how I was gonna start, my heart was gonna start beating and I'd get sweaty hands and then I would probably faint or I would tell myself this story. When we're in that mode, we are so creative. We are so creative and we can create these stories. And guess what? We believe them. We actually believe them. So, with noticing, getting in my car, I would notice that my heart was beating. I would notice that this story is creeping into my mind. I would notice the sweating, and that's okay. It's just noticing. The next step is naming. What is it that I'm feeling? What is this emotion? Anxiety. I'm anxious. I'm nervous. It is what it is. Now, during this course, one of the things that I learned that really made a difference was that you can't control your thoughts. And when people tell you, oh, you can't think this way, you can't think that way, you got to think positive. Yeah. That's not how it works. That's not how our mind works. And it's quite scary thinking that we can control our thoughts and then we can't. What happens? No, you can't control your thoughts. What we can do is control how we react to them. That is where choice comes in. So we have this thought, we we just notice what's happening to ourselves. We name it, we give it a name, and then we choose. We choose. We choose one step, one small step. And I'll give you an example with driving. My therapist helped me, I have to confess. But he said, so notice, name it, and then find something that you can count. So, the first time I got into the car to deal with my panic attacks, I could feel it. I noticed it. I named it. I named it. And then I chose to count trees. And that's all I told myself. Just count trees. I didn't go further. I didn't go any further. It's just that first small step. And it makes a difference because that first time I counted so many trees, so many trees. You have no idea. And then when there was a stretch of the road with no trees, I would count the lampposts and I would count the signs. But it helped me, and it was my choice. I rarely count trees now. Um, so this is what we're doing with our students is uh, uh, showing them that we need to notice and name it, but we're not going to stick it here. We're just sticking it here on the side because it's okay. It's all okay. But we're going to choose that first step. And we're going to use the word just. I'm just going to count trees. Now, I want you to imagine you are one of your students, okay? Just picture that student. And you give this instruction to the class. You say, I want you to give a 10-minute talk to the class, and I'm going to give you 20 minutes to prepare. Okay? So let's start, okay? Take a deep breath, and I want you to notice, as your student, what's happening to your body right now. Okay? Take a breath. I want you to name it. So you're going to give a 10-minute presentation in front of the class. You've got 20 minutes to prepare. Name it. Notice, name it. Now choose. You have choice. Pick one small action that can help you. One small action. And put the word just in it. And can you type that into the chat box? Oh, me in the chat box. I can, oh, here it is. Oh. Sorry, Chantel, I can't find my chat box. It disappears. It's okay, but that's okay. I'm noticing it. I'm naming it. I'm choosing to just rely on you.
Okay, that's absolutely fine. So the thoughts that are coming in now, I'll just focus on one person's face. I'm just going to grab a piece of paper and make a mind map with a few first thoughts. Be yourself. Just smile.
So, sorry, to move on, I'm just, for example, imagine you're doing speaking in class. So it's a speaking. It could be, I'll just say one sentence. I'll start with one sentence. You don't, you're not thinking of like all these steps afterwards. They'll come. They'll come because it's that first step that's the most difficult. Or I'll just say one sentence and smile. The rest will come. You don't have to put all this pressure on yourself with what's coming next. Just start with that first step. It's a writing task. I'll just write one word to begin. I'll just write one sentence to begin. It's a grammar exercise. I'll focus on just the first question. Group work. I'll share just one idea. The rest will come. But if it's always that first step that's the most difficult. Okay. It's for me, it was the first time I got on the road and counted trees. And these are little strategies that we can help our students, but they help us as well. I mean, this is me. I notice, I name, I choose. Not all the time, not all the time, because we're not perfect. So this is judgment in the context of mindfulness. Now, I mentioned Stephen Krashen and the affective filter. Now, he says when anxiety is high, input doesn't become intake. And it's also common sense. Yeah. Anxiety. We know what anxiety does to us. Yeah. Tell me I'm not alone. I know what we know what anxiety does to us. So yeah. So just think of the last time you had to speak a foreign language. Do you remember? And your mind went blank. So Krashen explains this with the affective filter. So anxiety, fears, a fear of mistakes, shame, these things raise the filter. So the language is present, but it can't be processed. So let's give this a try. I want you to say to yourself silently in your head, don't make a mistake. All right, you're going to say that in your head. Don't make a mistake. Don't make a mistake until I tell you to stop and I give you the next instruction. Okay? All right. Okay. Now, whisper really fast, three animals that can fly. Hands up once you've done it. Was that easy, difficult? Um, I mean, I'm sure it was quite easy, but think of the number of times you say to yourself, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do anagrams. Forget it, and you can't. Um, so um, our role is less about fixing mistakes, and it's more about lowering the filter. That's what we need to focus on first. First, we need to lower the filter, and then we can focus on mistakes. So it's also thinking about, well, we're working with a foreign language. What's the most important thing in a foreign language? Is getting a message across, isn't it? Yeah. So first the message, and accuracy will come second, will come afterwards. And this means um, that our students are aware that we understand the message. I get you. Okay, so you're talking about what happened yesterday. You used the infinitive. Who cares? I understood you. And I react to that because that's what communication is all about. Now, if I'm going to be correcting everything you say, what happens? The story is going to end there. Yeah, because I don't feel comfortable telling you the rest or saying the rest. Um, so we need to focus on message and acknowledge that the message was understood. And perhaps if it wasn't, we can ask some questions to clarify. Don't we do that when we're traveling? There are some friends of mine here from Pilgrims, and I was in Segovia. I spent 3 weeks in Segovia this year, and I made a point of speaking Spanish, and it was fine. It was fantastic. And I know I made loads of mistakes, but I know I was able to communicate. And sometimes I would say, ¿Cómo se dice awkward in español? And they would tell me. And it's fine. And that is fine because that's real world. And if we want our classes to mirror real world, that means there's a place for mistakes, right? So think about the phrases. Think about what you say in class. Thanks for the risk. I got your idea. Focus on the effort, not on the mistake. Make sure your students understand. Your students know that you understand. And also encourage that amongst them. And making them realize that errors are data, they're not disasters. As teachers, we're collecting data because they'll help us with the teaching and with the learning, but they're not disasters. They're a normal part of a classroom, and they're a necessary part of a classroom. Okay, so let's move on to Carol Dweck and the growth mindset, which I really, really like. Now, she says that mistakes equal feedback. They're not verdicts. And I quite like, I mean, this is in line also with Krashen. And she talks about, so we have the fixed mindset where errors confirm I'm bad at English. I can't. I told you I couldn't. I can't. I can't do these anagrams. I can't. And then we have the growth mindset where errors confirm I'm learning English. That's what it says. When you make mistakes, it just says you're learning. That's all it says. And I have to refer to Pilgrims again. And in August, I was there with my friends, my colleagues doing training in Segovia, and Phil Dexter, who's the director of studies at Pilgrims. We were talking about learner-centered teaching, and then he talked about the learning-centered classroom, and that's really. It is, isn't it? It's the learning-centered classroom where there is a place for errors, where we're not judging good or bad. We're noticing them, we're naming them, but they're part of learning and they're part of this growth mindset. And also, we need to talk about these things with our learners. It's not a secret that we should be keeping to ourselves. We should be talking about the role of errors, judgment, these post-its. These are conversations that we need to have with our learners so they understand how learning takes place. It is not a secret that we should be keeping from them. And also she talks about, and this is really interesting, that so we have to be careful with this judgment that we make when it comes to mistakes. But too much positive judgment is also dangerous. Think about all that praise you give that's empty. How often do you say, fantastic, well done, great, da 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 da? It's meaningless. Or students may think that they need constant validation. And if they don't get that validation, what's the point? So we need to balance that. And again, bringing in our phrases, the language we use in class. So instead of just saying, great, well done, da, 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 fine, perfect, da, try nice effort. What helped you get there? Get them thinking about how they got to that answer. Yeah. So you're challenging. That's where growth comes in. Could you try differently next time? Growth. I like the linking words. What's one more you could add? Growth. Okay, so thinking about the language we use with our learners, um, which is focused on that process, that learning. So Dweck says that errors are feedback, not failure. They just show what we need to work on next. They are information, they're not verdict. There's the shift from I can't do this to I can't do this yet. Yeah, and that famous word yet that changes everything. We talked about that in the summer as well. How important. Just like before, I was like, just that first step. Think about, when we teach just and yet, think about this context, how we can work on these words in this context. Um, because yet opens the door to growth. And words matter. Words matter. Praise effort and strategies, not just results. Very important. And actually, scientifically, there's science here that says that mistakes make the brain grow. So they are important. Scientifically, they are, because research shows that when we make a mistake, there are these things that happen in your brain. I can't explain them because I'm not a scientist, but it strengthens learning. All right. Okay, so let's just move on because time is. Ooh. So Edmondson says that people will only speak up if it feels safer or more valuable to speak than to stay silent. So it has to do with cost. And I know this sounds very like from the finance world, and those who know me know that I do not like those words, but it has to do with cost. So the student may think if I answer and it's wrong, people will laugh. So the cost of speaking is high, so they stay silent. If a student thinks, oh, if I don't answer, I won't learn or I won't join in the group, then the cost of silence is high and they'll join in. So we need to lower the cost of speaking, so removing fear and creating safety, and raise the value of speaking. And this is celebrating risk taking. It's showing that effort is useful. Okay. Now, safety doesn't mean comfort. It does not mean comfort. It means courage. And we need to encourage courage in our classrooms. Okay? Um, Learners will only risk speaking if they believe they won't be humiliated. So we need to work on that courage that students need to take risks because taking risks requires courage. So just recapping, we have noticing without labels. So we're removing these post-its that we stick to us and just putting them somewhere else, not getting rid of them. They're around, but we're not letting them stick to us and to others as well, because we place post-its on others. We tend to be, I think, harder with ourselves, but also think of because when you're sticking that post-it on others, actually you're sticking it on yourself. Oh, Joanne was an attention seeker. You're just adding more here. Yeah. Eventually you can't see, you can't do anything because you're just covered in these, and then you can't get in the car and drive. Um, so, and also think about the lens that you're looking at the person. You're looking at the person through that story that you've created through that post-it. He's attention seeking, That's who Joan is. So I'm only going to look at him that way. Caution, lowering the filter, thinking about anxiety. How am I going to do that? Lowering it first, accuracy will come after. Message. Yeah, I understand the message. Reframing the error. That's what and that growth and that errors are part of learning. They just show that we're learning. And finally, Edmund talking about making risk, create an environment where, students feel safe to take risks. Again, it's a mindset, and only you know your classes, you know your students, you know yourself. So we have to see what works for ourselves and for them. Just quickly, because we don't have a lot of time. Steffi, I've brought thunks. Steffi and I love thunks. Ian Gilbert. I'm just going to show you some questions. We can't talk about them, but just what thoughts come into your mind? Okay. All right. I love thunks. I use them a lot in the classroom. Did they make you go, hmm? That's the point of the thunk. The thunk, it's supposed to make you go, ow. This thinking is making me go, ow. Now, is there a right or wrong answer here? There's no right or wrong answer. So what we're doing here is allowing students to talk about things without worrying if they're right or wrong. We're giving and telling them there's no right or wrong answer here. And I'm not listening out for mistakes. I'm just curious. Remember curiosity being important? Aren't you curious to hear what others have to say about dolphins and cows? You know, we think about this all the time, don't we? It's life-changing getting that answer. But we're creating that safe environment here, that safety, that psychological safety, where they're not going to be judged. Um, and allowing them to take risks. This is just an example in the activity. Can you think of moments in your class where you can design tasks where students can take risks and feel safe, lowering that filter, where they're not putting those post-its of I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it? How? So that's a challenge I'm setting for you. How can you bring that safety into your classes? I think routines are really important. I love working with routines, especially when you're working with children and teenagers. You know, you need certain routines. So one of my routines is favorite error. I mean, I'm not going to debate like the difference between mistake and error. That's a whole other conversation. So I'm using it interchangeably here. Favorite error. And this is, I like doing this. I like to pay attention to what my students are saying. And then at the end of each lesson, I highlight one error and I call it my favorite error. Um, I say it, I never name students. Remember that errors help us with learning. You remember that growth mindset. And our students, and we do that as well, make mistakes over and over again. And then there are those common mistakes that they make. So imagine you hear a student say, informations or advices. Ooh, ooh, those countable and countable. Got a moment here. Ooh, 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 I could do a bit of teaching here. Perfect, isn't it? Because I can guarantee that about 80% of the class needs that learning. Yeah. So listening out for your favorite error, turning it into a routine, and not picking on the same student all the time. Yeah, making sure you kind of listen out to different students and use that for learning. Use that because I bet you that student who made the mistake will probably say, "Oh, that was me." Or others will say, "Oh, I make that mistake all the time. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I'd forgotten." There's always learning taking place there. So think of errors as data and use them in this learning-centered classroom. I like the 2 stars and a ladder. And this is something I work with students. It's when they're giving feedback to each other, when they're doing like a speaking activity. And you tell them 2 stars and a ladder. One thing I liked, so one thing you liked, another one that's positive, and one next step. I really like this. That word was was very good or whatever. Why don't you add this? Or why don't you? So you see the kind of feedback they're giving. Also, it's so the quality of the feedback, and they're helping each other. But also, this helps with active listening because they have to pay attention. And they're paying attention to the positive. So they're not like, you're not getting them like judging each other and, but also thinking of growth and how they can help each other and how learning is a collaborative act. And talk about these things with your students. There's no secret here, remember? We're not keeping secrets from our students. Um, Help, don't tell. So encourage students when they're working in groups or together, encourage them to give hints and not verdicts. Instead of saying that's wrong, come on, it's two syllables. I love doing this game at the beginning of the lesson to recycle vocabulary from the previous lesson. Have you ever played back to the board? Or we call it hot seat as well. So you get a student to come up and sit with their back to the board. Teacher writes a word from previous lesson. Student can't see it. And the class gives them clues to guess what the word is, but they can't use the word. What I love doing, it really puts students on the spot. I always get volunteers to do this, but I love doing it because students are so helpful. They're so empathetic because they imagine themselves in that seat, you know? And what I notice is they start giving all these clues and they get worked up because they really want to help that student. And they start miming and they'll say, it's 5 letters. It begins with an A. The next letter is a D. This is when they're getting desperate, right? Eventually, the word, I mean, they've practically spelled it awkward. They've spelled awkward. Does it matter? Does it matter? No. That collaboration is so beautiful. And we need to foster that, yeah, and appreciate it and celebrate it in our classes. Create judgment-free zone in your classroom. Create a board where students can post questions, mistakes, or worries without names, and the teacher uses these anonymously in class discussions. Perhaps the student's having a problem with uncountables and just says, I don't know this. I still find this difficult. I'd like to talk about this. No, no name, no name, but it gives you an opportunity to work with things in class. Celebrate the attempt. Each time a student tries something difficult, even if unsuccessful, the class acknowledges it with a small ritual. Like I do this with my students. Hey, we just do the snap or a finger. I don't know, just a little gesture that celebrates the attempt. Now, this normalizes risk taking. So even the student that notices the attempt is thinking this is important. It's all about effort. And finally, thinking about the language we use, we should be working with language of curiosity. So establishing classroom phrases like, I wonder why, tell me more, to replace evaluation, to replace those reactions that are evaluating. And we need to model them consistently. And finally, this is another one of my favorites. It's the personal growth journal. I love journaling with my students. I think it's a very calm way of ending a lesson rather than say bell rings and throwing their books into their bags. And I think it's one of the most important moments of a lesson is the end and how we end a lesson. And because reflection is such an important part of our lessons. It's an important part of learning and remember, there's no secret. We share this information with our students. Reflection is part of learning. So journaling at the end of the lesson to encourage learners to reflect for themselves. And this builds confidence that comes from within. And we need to work on that confidence. What went well today? What effort? Not what I got right. What effort am I proud of? What will I try differently? These are just some questions I use. And I don't do this every lesson. I'll change the topic for the journaling. But imagine you had a speaking lesson where students really, they were put on the spot and get them reflecting on that. All right. Also, they might notice their own progress, getting them to look back. How did you feel on this day? How do you feel now? Okay. Growth. And also making them aware of growth and their role in that growth. And just we're coming to an end. And because I like to reflect, and this is I always do this reflection, head, heart, and hands. I'd like you to think, what is one thing today in this webinar that made you think? Hmm. Made you go, hmm. I don't want you to share it. Reflection is personal. What is something in this webinar that made you feel? Doesn't matter if it was positive or negative. That's okay. It's all okay. And hand, what is one action? What is something you're taking away that, you're going to do? What's that first step? Remember choice? Huh? Yeah, that first step. Let's go back to our questions. Yeah, can you have a look at them quickly? Which ones were answered? I'm not going to ask you. That's personal. Okay. And maybe you need to reflect on this later. Maybe it can help you reflect on the webinar. Now, the questions that remain that you haven't answered, the unanswered ones, they're invitations. They're not failures. And that's what I want you to take with you. Invitations to find out more about this. Invitation to create this mindset in your class. Invitation for you to reflect on yourself and judgment. And do you remember what I said at the beginning? Maybe I'll bring this to the end. When curiosity replaces judgment, voices grow stronger. How do we bring curiosity to the class? I started off with those questions. And it's what I do sometimes when I'm starting a new topic with my students. I don't know, the topic is extreme sports, What 6 questions do you have? We might not be answered in that lesson, but it could be in that unit, you know? There are no secrets. This is what we're going to be working on. Yeah? Get them curious because when they're really curious, they will seek out the answer. I can promise you that. My bibliography. Thank you very much. I think I was okay with timing 3 minutes.
You're absolutely perfect, Anna.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.
Thank you so much. Honestly, there's so much input and sort of following the chat box, so much positivity. Your talk was really, really appreciated. And thank you for also sharing your vulnerability and for sharing your own personal journey. I think it made everything so much more meaningful. And I think there's so many beautiful things that you said. I think I've written about 7 pages of notes here, which I will definitely reflect on afterwards. But I saw when you were going through Notice, Name, Choose, how much positive feedback was in the chat of how wise it is, and it just makes so much sense. And definitely your line, errors are data, not disasters. I'll be sharing immediately with my students tomorrow. It was wonderful. It really was. Anna, thank you so much.
Thank you. I don't know if there are any questions, but
I haven't come across questions I think everybody was just so sort of enraptured by you, to be honest.
well, as I said, the questions are an invitation for more learning.
Yeah.
And it's always wonderful when, that learning continues. And I hope this was just the first step.
I think it made us all think about those words just and already as well. And no secrets.
No
Share all of this
secrets.
now.
I think that's one of our problems is we know these things, but we forget our students don't know these things.
Yes.
And why not talk about them?
Mm.
the role of errors, the role of mistakes, attention. We never talk about attention, do we? And we keep saying they don't pay attention. But do we talk about attention with them? We don't talk about their choices. We don't tell them that thoughts are not something we can control, but we can choose how to react to them. We don't tell them. So these are conversations we can have in the classroom.
Mm. Definitely so much food for thought, Anna, and I think we're all so grateful to have all of these thoughts heading into a new school year, and I'm sure it'll make an impact on us and on our students as well. So thank you again
Thank
for
you.
being with us, for joining us. Thank you all for being with us this evening after your long day at work. So we can only wish you the very best heading into your school year if you haven't started already. And as we said, stay tuned. We have another lovely session coming up in October, and we hope you'll be able to join us for that as well. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you and have a great year, everyone.